definitely works. Big surprises, couple big surprises at the end. Readers just didn't see coming. Fine. They came to like this improbable hero. Fine. On to my next book. Didn't know what it would be. And all of a sudden, the response from around the world, because as I mentioned, they're sold in the books are sold in many countries. They kind of like this guy. They kind of like this strange creature who lives in Central Park West and never gets out, and thinks the solutions to the crimes, and is brilliant.
Didn't you ever read Rex Stout?
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, I think what you've done in an interesting way is you've sort of crossed Nero Wolfe with Sherlock Holmes.
Right. And we have our Archie, too. We have...
Well, you've got legs.
Archie and Amelia.
You've got Amelia Sachs. And so, I mean, you have to have some mobility somewhere. Right. So, obviously...
She's good with a gun and she drives fast cars. So we need... These are thrillers. We need a bit of that.
But I've always thought that, Stout did a really interesting thing, although Wolfe voluntarily cloistered himself. It wasn't that he couldn't go out, because occasionally he did, but he didn't want to go out. So you always had this extra problem of having to bring stuff to him.
Right.
And I think but he wasn't a forensics guy.
Right.
And that's where I thought you'd done a really interesting job with Rime, in the sense that he's got those Sherlockian, cigarette ash and, updated to CSI.
All the fancy
all that kind of thing. But at the same time, although it's not voluntary, you've given him that whole Nero Wolfe profile as well, and that combination, it certainly worked over gazillion Rex Stout books.
And I think there is kind of an appeal, because I travel on the road for about 2.5 months out of the year, but the rest of the time I sit home, I watch TV, I have dinner parties and so forth. I think there's a homebody in all of us somewhere. We don't all have wanderlust. And something about Lincoln Rhyme staying at home in his townhouse with his peregrine falcon up on the ledge, his aide.
Of course, in New York, everything can come to you. I mean, you've put him in a city in which, in fact, you can lead.
He's not in a small town in Kansas.
Exactly.
That's true.
You can lead a life in New York where it's not unusual that, in fact, absolutely everything would come to you.
They have pizza delivery. They have Chinese food delivery.
You can have anything in New York.
Delivery.
I mean, absolutely anything without a raised eyebrow. My sister has lived in New York forever. We have an apartment in New York. I'm familiar with that. Actually, Phoenix is an interesting place in the sense that you can do that if it's more geared up, or was originally more geared up for the elderly and for people who are disabled in some fashion, because it's a big city for retirement and for healthcare. But now it's kind of spread out, and it goes all the way from grocery delivery to personal shopper on and on. So I mean, I don't think it's odd that Lincoln Rhyme today, anyway, could lead his kind of life.
And nobody really seems to think twice about that. The limitation I find with Lincoln is not his disability. It is that he is a forensic scientist.
Right.
And that limits the type of story you can tell, because that is his specialty. And people obviously love forensic science now. Look at A&E and the Discovery Channel and all the CSI.
Oh, we're being
blitzed. Do you have CSI Phoenix Scottsdale yet? Or is that coming?
I'm not really sure, but I have really noticed this spring the number of people. There's a new woman out who's a geneticist who's got her first novel. She works in, Bill Bass, the Body Farm guy from UT, is writing a book. Although they've been upfront about the fact that Jeffers is writing the book. We just had Tom Holland from your publisher, Simon & Schuster, who does, Aaron Elkins, in fact, is like the original CSI guy. He was just here pointing out.
He's got a new,
that Gideon Oliver has a new book set in the Sillies.
Kathy Reichs has a new book.
Well, and there's Kathy, of course, and so there's been a huge interest always, I think, in the forensics, but the TV show has driven a number of people kind of like out of the lab and onto the page.
I laugh at an incident about 10 years ago. I've done a little work in Hollywood and was talking to my agent, and I said around the time The Bone Collector was published, it wasn't a movie yet, and although it had been bought. And I said, movie, but let's think about, there are really no forensic science TV shows. And my agent said, Jeff, who's going to want to watch some scientist sitting around looking through a microscope for 50 minutes on a show? And I said, well, he must know his stuff. So
isn't it interesting? If you just get to the right place at the right moment, like the Da Vinci Code.
Exactly.
I brought with me one of my favorites of all your books, Garden of Beasts, which is actually an historical. It's Nazi Germany, whatever. It is not Lincoln Rhyme. It's a little bit different. And you are like a short story machine. You've won, I know, in fact, wasn't it the year before last, you won 2 daggers from the British Crime
did,
Writers?
yes, yeah.
One was for best thriller and one was for best short story.
Yeah.
God, what an achievement that was.
That
I
was
so
the first,
impressed.
actually, the first time any author has won those 2, let
Exactly.
alone a non-Brit. So I was extremely honored about that.
Well, you've done brilliant short stories, and you've written one for me. And not only that, not only have you written a short story for A Merry Band of Murderers along with other authors, but you composed a song
Right.
to go with it. We're going to publish it this fall, and
I'm not going to sing it today. Thank goodness I see no guitars here, Barbara.
No,
We're safe.
we won't do that. But I'm very excited about it, and I think it's wonderful.
It's a very fun project.
That you were willing to do that. But I also know that you have such a facility for short stories that it probably wasn't as burdensome as it might have been for other authors.
Well, maybe I won't share it. I think I wrote it in 2 days. Short
I'm
story.
not surprised. I would imagine that you toss those off.
They come pretty quickly. The anthology is called Twisted, and
Right.
we're doing
You're doing another one, aren't you?
this later this year, I think.
And this is your collected, well, they were published perhaps, but collected short
yeah,
stories.
I'll be writing an original for it. An original
And that's kind of a
novel.
sales hook, right?
Yeah.
To put like one original story in and
I
then
may
the
do
rest.
2 because although we haven't gotten to this, and I'm sure we will, at least in the interest of shameless self-promotion, but I'm doing starting a new series next year.
You are.
Character in the Cold Moon, who is assisting Lincoln Rhyme in tracking down this evil
Oh, the
villain.
kinesics woman.
Yes,
Great.
Catherine Dance.
I liked her a lot.
Yeah, a lot of she's done quite well. She's well, I say she's done quite well. She's very popular among readers and among my other publishers around the world. And I'm also in love with her. I think she's a fascinating character, and she's not to belabor it too much, but she is a kinesics or kinesics expert. It's pronounced 2 different ways, and the word itself simply means motion, but as used in law enforcement and sociology and trial work in the courts, it refers to a body language expert.
Who does interrogations as the consequence?
Yeah,
or
that is her
interrogate.
specialty, and she's sort of the antithesis of Lincoln. Although she brings scientific principles, behavioral, psychological principles to the mix, and she has a huge wealth of knowledge about people's speech patterns and dialects and so forth. Very fascinating character, and so she plays an adjunct role in The Cold Moon, and then goes back home to California, where she's an agent for the California Bureau of Investigation, and she has her own case.
I'm not
next year.
even a little surprised. In fact, when I read it, I was pretty sure that
Most
you
people
were.
had a.
Yeah.
We're
you
doing
know.
the Mary Tyler Moore spin-off here.
Well,
We
you be
introduced
careful you don't turn into Dorothy Sayers, you know. I mean, things went bad when she fell in love with Lord Peter, so you got to keep that little distance between you.
Oh, absolutely. I have people ask me often, well, what happens, if you just fall totally in love with the character? And I say, they're the next victim. Author has to keep his distance.
Very good point.